The 911 dispatchers learned several lessons on September 11th, staying calm on the radio, dealing with phone calls professionally, and keeping track of units in the field are just some of the lessons they shared with us. Some stressed the need for television in their communications center to assist in providing live data regarding the incident. The need for common radio channels, unified command, ongoing training, and remembering to never assume while taking or dispatching a 911 call were among the lessons to be learned.
New York State is not the only one who's had to deal with this. Washington, D.C. had to deal with this. Pennsylvania had to deal with this. And then back in the early 90s, Oklahoma City had their big explosion. And at that time, that was the worst terrorist attack on our nation. And they went through heck. And they survived. And we took a lot of what was learned from there to here. Littleton, Colorado had Columbine. That was another big thing for a big situation for a communication center to have to deal with. You just have to stay calm, just do your job, just go back on your training. The training is there, just remember it.
We were turning the TV on in the Manhattan office. It was basically the only way that we can really get some reasonable idea of what was going on. We weren't getting very good progress reports from the field. They were overwhelmed there. And of course, after the first collapse, the eerie thing was the silence. We keep calling for the field comm, and we know that they were there because we had been talking to them, and then we don't hear anything. And we couldn't forget anybody to answer the radio for quite a while, and it was very scary.
Marine 6 to Manhattan, urgent.
Marine 6.
Howard 2 has had a major explosion and what appears to be a complete collapse surrounding the entire area.
Marine 6, 10-4, we were notified, Kate. Manhattan Field Com, Kate. Manhattan Field Com.
A seasoned person has been through these kinds of things, not anywhere near this magnitude, but similar stuff. Was quite, I was actually almost speechless. I mean, there was absolutely no idea of what we could possibly do. It's obvious they need help, but what kind of help, what to do? We're totally unprepared, and you know that it's a big building and it collapses, and now, what you have no idea what the configuration, what it looks like.
Up a staging area and a command post further away from the actual incident. In the case of this one, in the Trade Center, the command posts were either in the lobbies of the buildings or nearby on West Street. And in a case where you have something like that, like a large building, you may want to bring it back a few blocks in case there's a possibility of a collapse.
One of the things that really improved here right off the bat was that we got a television to keep in the office. And you don't use it when you don't need it because you got to be doing your job. But when you do need it, when you do need the contact with the outside world to better serve the people that are out there, that was one of the best things. Because otherwise, you're so isolated and you're, grasping at whatever is coming into you, trying to use that to help. And there are a lot of things. I think that people realize that they need to be prepared for a lot of things that they never thought would have a chance of happening. And you hear about all these policies and the reform and, not even just in a dispatch office, just overall, how people are really starting to realize that you got to be prepared for everything. It sounds silly to say because you can't be prepared for everything, but you've got to give it your all. And you've got to try to think of every situation that you could possibly be encountered with. And even if you can't come up with the extreme solution, some guidelines to go by.
Each individual person needs to be fully trained, and they have to be capable of operating independently.
And we had a couple of people there who knew the center, the communication center, inside and out. They knew exactly what to do and when to do it and what to do and who's the best people to do it. So the best people were assigned the best positions. And not saying it, not taken away from anybody else, but the best was put in the best position, and they back up people who were behind them. So it ran as smooth as it possibly could run.
Just don't doubt your people. Your people, as long as you've trained them to the best of your ability, will do the job that you want them to do.
I'm so proud of the personnel that comprise Arlington County's 911 Center, because they are clearly, as dispatchers and call takers are throughout the nation, people that think ahead, people that are proactive. And I have always promoted and preached to them to think strategically and act dramatically and act dynamically. Don't necessarily wait for something to happen, but think ahead, anticipate it, if you will.
Your experience as a dispatcher and how to handle calls when they're coming in at that rate. You know, just basically, it might sound cold, but taking calls and getting rid of them as fast as you possibly can, taking care of them, you know, as quickly as possible, because during that whole mess, there were other stuff that we had to worry about. You know, people needed ambulances, and
we got the men out there, and we made sure where they were each time. My other partner and I, we just sat there. You know, we made sure, where's our cars, where's our, you know, who's there, who's where. We had the list going, and then also knowing where the firefighters were. You know, the ambulance continued to bring the injured. I kept hearing them on the radio. They would call here and there, and I got him on the cell phone once, my assistant chief, and he said, "We're just keep bringing the injured into Jersey City, you know, off the ferries."
Anticipate something to go wrong and write that stuff down. This way, have it prepared for you. So if a chief comes up to you or asks you on the radio, "Do you know where this guy is?" "Oh yeah, he's over here." That's the biggest thing to do, to keep track and to keep your head together. Once you get that fear in you, you're never going to get it out of you.
Oh, there's so much we have to learn, so much we have to do to improve. Communications definitely has to be more improved than it is, even though it was as best as we had. The dispatchers did the best they could with what they had, coordinating units, coordinating the field bosses, coming and letting us know what they needed and trying to get them what they needed, taking from other boroughs whatever units they needed. We only had so many that were in that area, and then now we got to take from other boroughs. Now we're taking from other cities, and we're taking from other states.
All of the metropolitan area to be served by radio systems that were on the same common channels and allowed for interoperability. And we use that interoperability every day. It's not just reserved for the big ones, but it's reserved for every time we cross our borders into someone else's or them into us, and we switch channels back and forth with great routine practice, whether it's for a heart attack or for a bank robbery or for a structure fire or for an event of the kind that occurred on September 11th.
initially, when we decided that we were going to have some kind of command post out there, our first concern was, well, we have fire departments operating on low band radios. We have EMS that are on high band radios. State police are on high band, but they're on different frequencies. You know, communications was one of our key issues. Trying to set up and deal with the different agencies that were coming in and how we were going to be able to communicate and get everything coordinated into one spot. You know, we tried to pull somebody from each of the agencies, from the fire service, from EMS, and from police to help coordinate with their units. We looked around for a place that was going to be suitable for a command post, and there were some old buildings around there from when the strip job was there that had some offices in, so the state police were able to commandeer the building. The building that we used sat and overlooked the actual crash site, so we actually had a visual of the crash site from the command post. It gave us a little bit more elevation and a place to set up that we could like I said, oversee operations. We could pretty much monitor what was going on down there.
Just maybe keep in the back of your mind that, hey, this could happen. It could happen to anybody, and you need to think maybe what you would do, you know, when it does happen.
When I became a dispatcher here, and I'm sure it's probably the first thing, if not one of the first things taught in every other center, is never to assume anything. And I think that in itself played a huge role that day in all different facets. When the call from Flight 93 came into our center, I've heard people saying that, initially someone thought this has to be a joke, yeah, you're on a plane, and, as unbelievable as it was, it wasn't, Never to assume that, just because we don't have a major airport in our county, just like a regional airport, that something huge like that won't happen here.
I was on scene when the media started arriving and people started trying to work their way up and get pictures. And it seemed like within a relatively short period of time, we had more media than we had anything else there. So that became a concern, and we had to set up an area for them. Luckily, again, close to where this was, it was in a rural section of the county. There were a lot of farm fields, not a whole lot of residences close by, but a lot of fields, and we were able to set media up in a field within a couple hundred yards of the command post. So they had their own little area. We could do the briefings down there, but they were in a position that they could not see the actual crash site.
By 12 o'clock on the 11th, media started to call because they found out somehow, as it always gets out no matter what 911 center you work in, that we took a call. And at that point, I was directed as the public information officer to head back to the 911 center and start fielding the media calls. I got back to the new 911 center and made notification to all media that the calls should be coming through 2 particular numbers here at our new building, and that we would handle everything. That way they had one point of contact and they were getting the same answer. Everyone got the same information. No one got any more, no one got any less. It's the right thing to do, and it builds credibility for you and your department.
Always have to be somewhat prepared, even though you can't be 100% prepared. Have something that, change your clothes in your locker, or have another way to communicate, like if because like here the phones were down. You need some other kind of way to communicate with your family, or for them to communicate with you to make sure that everybody's okay. So I made up a plan. Like I told my daughter, your first thing to do is get to your brother, and then when you get to him, then you contact me. We're dispatching, and we can't be with our families if something like that happened unexpectedly. So at least have a plan where they could, get in touch with each other and then get in touch with you.
A good way of support is self-support. You cannot drop yourself to a level that you can't help. If you're there to help, if it's my job, and even though it's involuntary, you could think later. But if anything goes down, you should remember that they rely on you. You're the one with the telephones, you're the one with the radios.
We're in a field that everybody sees as heroic and we're lifesavers. To us, we're doing our job, but you do have to keep your feet on the ground. Because if you get caught up in that whole hero worship thing and you shoot to the top, it's a long fall on the way down. And some people don't recover very well from it. So.
September 11th proved to have many highs and lows. If the World Trade Center towers had stood for another 30 minutes, more emergency workers might have lost their lives. The 911 dispatchers knew that some of the units they were sending to the World Trade Center might not come back alive. In Shanksville, at the crash site of Flight 93, dispatchers set up a mobile field communications unit, knowing it was a recovery mission with no possibility of anyone surviving. The call takers and dispatchers of the Pentagon region worked tirelessly, providing resources to the Pentagon while being mindful that the nation's capital could be a target. We now hear the shared stories of the worst parts of the day and the rare moments where our voices professionals were uplifted by something positive.
Division 6, be advised, there's a full phone alarm assignment sitting in Brooklyn. Do you want them to report to Broadway and VZ? 6. All right, they're actually on the Manhattan side of the Brooklyn Bridge. If you need them, let us know.
Division 6 to Manhattan, absolutely. Center Broadway and VZ, right on Park Row.
All right, 10-4. All units who are responding to the staging area at the Brooklyn Bridge are to report into Broadway and VZ streets. Broadway and VZ streets.
If the building stood a little longer, we would have had maybe 1,000 firefighters going, because all the Queens and most of the Bronx units and units above basically 77th Street were caught in traffic getting there while they fell. So if you have to look at anything with that, if it stood another 20, 30 minutes, more of our brothers would have went in and did what they had to do.
We had a group of people stuck, I believe, on the 2nd floor. And they said they could not see nothing at all, nothing. So we stood on the line with them, and about 10, 15 minutes later, they were out the door. They were truly out the door, and they were just running.
The operation went well inside communications. We were holding 300-something calls with no units to send, all priorities, at the height of this incident, and we kept it in there. I'm very proud of my coworkers. They did one heck of a job in there.
John was like back on the phone calling, I think helping the supervisors call people in FBI and helping answer the phones, and I admire him so much for that, because I was just glad it wasn't me that took that call. You know, because I'm sure even to this day he thinks about, did I say the right thing? And he did. He did a bang-up job.
And seeing that everyone was still doing their job. You know, there was something big going on, something big had happened, but people were not panicking, not running around unsure of what to do. Everyone sucked it up, did their job, got the job done. It was great to see the cooperation between all the agencies that were down here. Our parking lot was full to the brim of just everyone from every agency and every organization in this area. And it was so amazing to need something and you dial down the hallway and there's a guy there ready to give it to you. Everybody wanted to help. Everybody wanted to do whatever they could do, because nobody wanted to feel like they should have done more or they didn't do enough. And you know, looking at the TV when I got home and looking at the newspapers the next day, the day after that, and you got to see all the people, all the strangers that just helped each other, helping people downstairs, helping people, you know, crawl out of this pile of smoke that was following them down the road. Those were the highs, seeing that humanity, you know, is not lost. There's still people out there that want to help a complete stranger just because they can.
I think that my proudest moment of communications was that day, because we really did a good job.
The biggest relief with the stress after you get done, we got done the first day, was going home to your family and making sure that they were, knowing that they were okay once you got there. We worked long hours those days, especially the first day and stuff, and for weeks to come, but I think it was the family thing, just to go home and have that sense of security at home.
The fact that we were able to keep the city running the rest of the week, we had half the city's resources were at the Trade Center. We didn't have very many companies left to work with in the rest of the boroughs. And we were very fortunate that there were no major fires in that time, because we were bolstered up by the volunteers and some paid companies from New Jersey and Long Island and also Westchester. We had a lot of people in firehouses who had never been in the city before. Unfamiliar equipment, they couldn't hook up to the hydrant sometimes. Their radios couldn't talk to us, but they were there. And we sent them, we managed to get them to runs, and they took a couple fires in. And we were just thankful they were there, because I don't know what we would have done had they not been there.
I am respected of the Jersey City fire dispatchers and the FDNY fire dispatchers. Listening to the tapes, I have the most respect for them. As a dispatcher, you don't get much credit. But that day, on 9/11, the dispatchers were the eyes and ears of everybody out there. They manned, they had the radios.
We're committed to our dispatching, but after such a tragedy, I felt that most of my fellow dispatchers were more committed to really pay attention now to suspicious packages, bomb threats, and like we're really on our P's and Q's with this now.
As far as looking at the job, yeah, very looking for the time, when am I getting off the job? But you know, I still love it. It's still the best job that there is at here.
The reality was the young lady's mother at the Pentagon, it was not her building. She was able to get out. Of course, you know, the trimmer and all of that. She was involved in that, but she was fortunate she was able to get out and she was not harmed. Our mother called and everything was fine, and of course, you know, you could just see everything lifted off of her. The young lady whose brother was on the plane, for whatever reason, they were able to persuade him to take a later flight, and he had not been able to contact his wife or his mother. And after hearing everything, the notifications were made, and of course her brother was fine. So, you know, we were fortunate in that instance, and, you know, we realized that a lot of other folks were not, but in our case, we were.
And what the toll was to the uniformed guys on the street, what they went through, because that affected a lot of people I work with. Some of them have a lot of time on the job, and they knew them personally. I knew two personally that were in the towers. One was Captain Terry Hatton, who ironically, I met him in 1993 at a reception for emergency workers after the bombing. So it was because of the Trade Center that I knew him, and then I lost him.
I was talking to the lady, all of a sudden, phone went down. We didn't know what happened until we found out that the buildings had collapsed.
I have a 2.5-year-old. My first thought was, when he was younger than that, was, am I going to see my baby again? I mean, you think it's ridiculous now to think like that, but it was too close to home. You know, the first thing I did after this last part, you know, the Somerset plane, I called home to, you know, just check on him. You just had to make sure he was okay. And that's when it's sometimes hard to separate, when you let your personal, you know, personal things get in the way, and you worry about them all the time when you're a parent anyhow, but when something like that happens and you think, you know, hey, those little kids thought they were going to see their dad or mom, you know, and it was just a really weird day. That's in my memory forever.
Being in Jersey City and knowing the building collapsed and hearing that Mayday call on the radio, and you couldn't do anything about it.
Being told about it, turning on the TV, and seeing that it was real. Because a lot of times, until you see it with your own eyes, you can act like it didn't happen. And then driving in and hearing the news and hearing somebody say that they're watching the tower collapse and they're watching this rubble just fall to the ground, it really almost made me cry, just sitting in my car, because you could hear the sorrow and the anguish in this person's voice saying, oh my God, you know, I can't believe this is happening. And it shakes you up, because you can, you know, tell that this person's hurting inside. And then finding out about Joe, that hurt. That was the worst part.
The 911 dispatchers who worked on September 11th will always have a lasting image in their mind. Some will remember that a loved one thought to be caught in the World Trade Center collapse had gotten out safely. There are those who will never forget the callers pleading on the phone for help before they jumped to their death. The dispatcher who received the phone call from one of the heroes of Flight 93 moments before it crashed in Pennsylvania will never forget that last call that lasted less than 1 minute. These stories will help you understand how difficult the lasting image of trauma is and how dispatchers must work hard to survive this demanding profession.
Before I know it, there were cops ringing our place and security was set up, and you guys yeah, we're under attack. This is war.
About 6:30 that evening, myself and John Lightsey, another dispatcher who at the time worked the radio for a good portion of the day, left the office to get refreshments. We had headed up across 79th Street to 3rd Avenue. As we got to 3rd Avenue and hooked the left to start heading uptown, I had looked back behind me to look down 3rd Avenue, and all you could see was a tremendous cloud of smoke and dust blowing out eastward towards Brooklyn. And that's when it really sunk in that everything, that the buildings were gone. And after that break, I pretty much stayed on the platform till about 8:30 in the evening, when I was ordered to leave for a few hours to take a break. I'd gone downstairs to the basement of the office, and we have some cots down there. I grabbed a cot, took my sweater off, used it as a pillow, and pretty much went comatose for about 7 or 8 hours, probably the hardest and best sleep I've gotten in a while. I came back up on the platform about 3 and was directed to sit this decision dispatcher position. And I hadn't really been given much of an update of what was going on or how, we had modified responses and everything like that. And after about 15 minutes, I said to the supervisor, I can't do this. I need to back off. Let me take phone calls.
As we heard officers screaming, we heard people crying and pleading. We saw people, walking over the bridge covered. Even the people at work, they were praying. Everybody, it was just the weirdest feeling I ever felt. I mean, I have never been in any real big situations, anything, but it was just a feeling that I can't describe, and it was like it was a blanket over us.
Say about 8:30 or so on Wednesday night, we were getting calls of odors of smoke, the Upper West Side, the Upper East Side. Apparently the wind had shifted. And I was sitting there waiting for dinner, and this really strange scent caught my nose. And I'm sitting there and I'm doing, the sniff. And I looked at another one of my fellow dispatchers, Cheryl Phillips. I said, Cheryl, do you smell that? She says, yeah. I said, what is that? I don't know. It was death. I smelled death. And then about 20 minutes later, we smelled the smoke. And I'll never forget that for the rest of my life.
I would say was coming to the job and going home that evening was terrible. I remember driving home on the, I don't know what time they let us out that night, but driving home I saw, I thought 3 ghost trucks, and it was 3 fire trucks that they had gotten out of the rubble, and they were towing them on the Brooklyn-Queens Expressway. And it was one of the saddest sights I've ever saw. And you hardly know it was a fire truck. There was lights there, but it was all covered with dust. And these are the ones that I guess they got out of the rubble. And it doesn't, the delay reaction, it doesn't hit you. And then all of a sudden you say, oh my God. And then the smell lasted for weeks and weeks and weeks. And people had no idea. People over here in Brooklyn were saying, making their faces, what is that smell? You don't want to tell them what it is. They don't know what it is. It's best that they don't know.
Usually you go home knowing, okay, the tour went fine, everybody went home safely, and it was a safe tour for everybody. That day was totally different. That day was, you went home with knowing that unit you sent was reported missing.
To me, it was just so unreal. It wasn't real. It happened, I was there, but it wasn't something physical that you could imagine or take away. 7 people get trapped or killed in an auto accident. You can fathom 7 people. But to try and fathom 3,000 people dying, and at that time they thought the numbers might be as high as 6,000. The number becomes so large that the mind can't comprehend it, and it's like a shut-off mechanism. I don't want to say my response was cold, but it was neutral. It looked like a giant Hollywood set. You'll never look at another movie and say, oh, that looks fake. It doesn't happen that way. It's exactly what it looked like. Even watching it on TV, airplane in one side, explosion out the other, it looked like a movie, but it wasn't.
I had a friend, he was a Port Authority police officer. We called him Ganja, and he's Officer Houston. And he was working that day, and he went in, you know, when the plane hit, the first thing I did, I called him, but he didn't call me back. So I said, okay, he was probably busy. So I waited about an hour, and I called him again, and he didn't call me. I said, look, stop playing, there's too much going on, call me back. So he didn't call me. So I kept, you know, I worked on and everything, and then I called him again, and I said, look, you need to stop playing games. But I was saying other things, you know, bad words on. I said, call my phone. And he never called me. So when I got home that night, I called his sister, and she told me that, you know, they hadn't heard from him. So I remained hopeful. You know, I'm always the glasses half full person. That's me. So I waited and waited, and then, you know, they found him. He had been crushed in the World Trade. He died in there. And that was my pool partner. We used to play pool. That was my friend, and I think about him all the time because he just got his house in Jersey. He just got a new car. All his things were like in a year. He only had these things for a year. He had a newborn baby daughter. She had to be about maybe 5 or 6 months maybe. And his little son, his wife, and I just thought about them and his sister, and I think about them all the time. And he was a nice, you know, if you met him, you couldn't help but like him.
The tower's fallen. That's never going to get out of my mind. I always will see that. That and the second plane striking, because we're watching it on the TV. I didn't get to see everything outside. I was inside, but we had the TV there.
So many lives that were lost in the World Trade besides fire department personnel, PD, Port Authority, and the civilians. It's just no way you could really think of what could have been done better, but you did your best and you gave it all. That's all you could do for that day.
You're more alert as to what's going on, and sure, you want to live, you're closer to your family because now you want to make sure, you know, not to say this is going to be the last day, but considering 9/11, you never know.
We have the screaming voices on the air. We have to know that we are the ones who sent these people to their, unfortunately, sometimes to either to be injured, or in some cases they were sent to the death. We're the ones who sent them there.
Each unit knew me by my name, and one said, "We're on the way, Epi," and the other one said, "All right, Joe." Who knew what would happen? So I always deal with that I sent them in, you know, and that I struggle with.
I remember one dispatcher telling me she heard one of the units saying, I need help, I can't breathe, and then they never hear from him again, and we lost him, you know, and, you know, she was shaken down to the core, you know, and just hearing all the other dispatchers saying, you know, the radio exploding, help me, I need help, and she said, well, we're gonna help you, and, you know, it just didn't really work out. Not a day has gone by that I don't think about the 11th, at minimum of once a day, if for no other reason than the fact that I live in Staten Island, I have to take the ferry across into Manhattan. So every day, I sit there on the ferry and I watch the skyline getting closer as we approach it, and there's no Twin Towers there. And I see it every day, and every day I think about it, and every day it bothers the hell out of me, you know?
And then the names started coming out, and even on, you know, we knew that we had known that the chief of department, Peter Gansey, Donald Burns, one of the staff chiefs, you know, was lost, and quite a few other names were banned. These are all people that I had personal interaction with, and just made it very, very, very difficult to cope with from a personal point of view.
The dispatchers in New York, and you know, the calls that they took from people, and in the midst of all that, in the midst of all the commotion, having the realization of all of the guys and, you know, women, people that they're, you know, partners with, that they lost them, you know, because you never, you know, guys go to fires, or firefighters go to fires, and there's always the risk of losing one or two, or, you know, a couple. and it doesn't happen very often, but to imagine all of them responding to help and losing as many as they did it's unimaginable, and I can't even imagine how hard that would have had to have been in the midst of having to take calls from, from their communities, knowing that there were, people out there that they're friends with that were lost.
Disbelief that it happened here, because it's a small, quiet area that nothing like that ever happens, and if we do have a major incident, it's usually weather related.
Is arriving at the actual impact site here in Somerset County and looking at what was there and trying to make sense of how a plane that large could totally disintegrate. And I mean, there was just nothing that would have led you to believe that a plane had actually hit there. I mean, there was debris around, there was papers, there was some small pieces of metal, but nothing really large. There was no whole bodies. There was pieces laying around that you just assumed were body parts, but you couldn't recognize them. They weren't very big.
The public calling in, just John Q. Public calling in saying, hey, I'm a retired military explosives expert. How can I be of some help? And then I had a widower. She called in. She was, what can I do to help you? Do you guys need food? Do you need water? Do you need this? Any way I can be of some help. Here's my name, my phone number. You call me if you need anything. Just the public trying to help. That the firemen, the EMS, the police officers, that will stick with me.
I wasn't sure that I wanted to go there. I'm still not sure I wanted to go there, but I did. I went. Actually, it wasn't very long after the plane went down that I'd spoken with the fire chief up there, and he invited me to come up. I spoke with the Somerset County coroner, and I actually met him there, and he actually took me to the site, to the where the actual plane went down. And I guess in one way it was like a sickening in the stomach, but in another way, I didn't want to be there, but I'm glad I went, type thing. Take nothing for granted, nothing. Because surely everybody's heard, here one day, gone the next. Well, when something like this takes place that you happen to be involved in, you really realize it. Without a doubt, no question about it, So I would take nothing at all for granted.
About 45 minutes into the incident, I got a phone call from my mother-in-law. Somebody just typed me a message across the computer and wanted to let me know that my brother-in-law, who works down there at the Pentagon, had gotten out and called Mom and said he was okay. So that was all right. That was the only point that I actually really started shaking until I was off the radio. We had the mobile command post bus down there, and one of the other CTOs and I were assigned to go down there for the night for the 12-hour shift. So I guess like 6 o'clock the next evening, the day after, we were in a police cruiser going through the security checkpoints, being dropped off at the bus, and just coming around the ramp at South Parking to go to the Pentagon and seeing this huge crater that you up to now have only heard about and seen on television was just phenomenal. I mean, it felt like you'd been sucker punched.
Like before, you go to the museum and you didn't have to go to the metal detector. You come in and out. And when you go any place now, it's so much security. When you fly, when you go here, when you go to the airport, and sometimes it got a little scary because now it's more security than before. I went home, I went to New York, and when you're coming from DC, you went up, and you always see the Twin Towers, and you see that view, and it's not the same anymore. So that's when it really hit me too. And my daughter, I got 3 daughters, and my daughter told me, Mommy, we're in New York, we're home. I said, yes, but it don't look the same. I said, yeah, we're home, we're here. It don't look the same, and that's really hit me too.
The first initial units, when they got on scene, to hear the familiar voice that there were some people there I fought fires with, went in the burning building with, and to hear their voice on the other end of the radio, telling us that they can't find anybody, they can't find anything. I mean, there's just debris there. You can hear the, I don't know if the word is horror in their voice, or the, I can't think of the word, the sadness maybe in their voice, the worry in their voice. To hear that, you know that they're upset maybe, you know they're concerned. So that gave us a little bit of an idea of what the scene would actually have been out there.
The depth of the tragedy, I don't think I ever will. It's, our world has changed, we know that. It's so bad. We were so free and so, we're not free anymore. Can't walk across the street now, they got the Jersey barriers, even by the bus stop across the street. And it used to be just everybody walk alone, you know, wherever you wanted to go was the greatest thing in the world. Not anymore.
Many people feel that all of the stress of September 11th was on the emergency units in the field. The dispatchers of that day are still dealing with the guilt of sending firefighters, police officers, and EMS workers to the last call of their lives. They can still hear officers and firefighters screaming on the radio when the towers fell. They listened and tried to help as partners called on the radio trying to find each other. Through it all, they continued working, knowing that some of those missing voices were their friends too. People they had dispatched for years, friends they will never see again, and co-workers they had grown to love and respect. Yet the 911 calls didn't stop. Knowing they had just lost friends and co-workers, they continued answering and remained the steady voice on the radio and phones. These are some of the specific moments of the stress that the voices of September 11th recall.
Basically learn the job and then, you know, trying to get stressed out about things. Because it's the #1 killer is the stress, you know, it's the silent killer. You have to know how to handle that stress. If you can't, then don't take the job.
And we sent all our special units. In fact, they specifically called on the phone and asked for our Rescue 4s, Queens, and our Squad 288. And I rolled them by phone, and I'll always remember that because each unit knew me by my name, and one said, "We're on the way, Epi," and the other one said, "All right, Joe." Who knew what would happen? So I always deal with that I sent them in, you know, and that I struggle with. But we do what we had to do. I mean, if there was a high-rise fire the next day, we would send them and they would go up. That's how we are. I know they found, I believe, a lot of the troops and the brothers were found in the rigs, you know, from that initial collapse. So
we lost 37, and that was every rank: the director of the police department, one of our chiefs, an inspector, one captain, a lieutenant, a sergeant, and 32 police officers.
I could tell you, even just today, relapses. You're going through and you're thinking about the poor guy that I saw jumping off the towers. I mean, I could tell you, this guy was wearing work boots. That's how close he was. And you could hear him all the way down until he hit. That was the toughest part. The other part of it is thinking to myself, what was it like inside that building with all the firemen dying? I mean, you know, you look up and all of a sudden there's walls coming down on top of you. What do? That's the hardest part of it. And the other thing is that every time I hear a boom that's not supposed to be there, I'm diving underneath the beds, on the tables. It's difficult. I mean, time is healing. Healing is time, but it's going to take a long time before I get over this.
We were sending in officers knowing that they may not come back out. And that was real hard on us. And there was some dispatchers, they were dispatching and crying at the same time, but they couldn't, you can't show that, let the units know that.
One of the first thoughts that ran through my head after the first tower had come down was, okay, how many friends did I just lose? And later on, I found out how many friends I had lost. I unfortunately lost 8 of my friends.
I say I'm fine, okay? But when I watch the programs, when I see the people on television, when they're crying about their family members, I see specials, documentary, it bothers me. It bothers me, and I cry because I feel really bad, you know, for these people, innocent people.
I mean, everybody's focusing on the people on the radio, but it's the people who are answering the phone calls who I actually believe had it worse, because they might have been the last people somebody talked to. I know the one person that told me they were talking on the phone, somebody's hanging from the window, oh, don't worry, they just fell. I mean, you really can't, what do you say to them? You can't. So it's, I think as we go along, I think things will get better.
And that was the second hardest part of the day for me, was going home. Because 1, I knew people were missing, and 2, I had to go home and see my family. And that was just as hard.
When that F-16 fighter jet went over our apartment, and the one guy just came in and said, "Did you hear that?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "That was an F-16. I'm like, this is not happening.
Trying to deal with this, the loss of life. I mean, at one point, there was a 110-story building falling down right in front of me, and I was watching 5,000 people die. And that's basically the difficult part of it, is watching that happen in front of you for no reason.
I spoke to my wife. She was upset. We can't, you know, I was thinking of my kids and my family. And then I knew my dad has an office in the Trade Center. He doesn't work there, but he works in the New Jersey office. But I found out he was going over there. So I still didn't know if he made it across. So I spoke to my mom, my sister, you know, my brother, and they all said, you know, "Have you heard from Dad?" No, I didn't. You know, so now I was getting more worried, besides trying to work the radios. And thank God I found out later on my father was on the highway when the first plane struck, and he made a U-turn and headed back to his office in Fairfield, and he made it home.
You know, every time I drive down the Brooklyn-Queens Expressway, looking towards South Manhattan, the whole skyline of New York has changed. I can't comprehend it.
2,800 innocent people lost their lives. You know, a terrorist act struck my hometown. And even on a more personal note, I lost a number of friends, a couple of really good ones that day. I try not to dwell on it. I mean, I've had my nightmares, and it's something I'll never forget.
And when the tower fell, I had to tell them, look, units in the field, be advised, the North Tower has fallen. And then they all screaming, "Are you sure? What you talking?" I mean, it was like they were screaming, "What's going on? It fell? What do you mean? The World Trade's not there?" And so I just repeated that back to them. Then the air got silent.
The impact site had already been almost completely filled in. There were dump trucks bringing dirt to finish covering the site. And up until that point, for months, I had never cried. But standing there, knowing what had happened, and I was involved in it, it really hit me very hard.
And it wasn't really until the weekend afterwards that I just broke down, you know, just to kind of release all the stuff inside. And just, you know, I was upset because of one of the dispatchers here that had passed away, Joe Lavero. I had found out about that night, you know, of the Trade Center. And, you know, just getting it all out, because when I was here working, you can't get it out. And when you're out doing your, you know, stuff on the outside, you know, life carried on. It was different, but life was still, you know, going on. You still have to go to the supermarket, still have to go to the bank, still have to do all your stuff. But I was out camping. I was doing a, you know, beach cleanup with my dive shop, and it was just quiet. We were out in the woods, and, you know, it was just the silence kind of really made you realize what had happened. And I just broke down and just started crying just to get it out, you know.
A friend of mine who's a Jersey City fire dispatcher, he belongs to the New Jersey Metro Fire Photographer Association like I did, he died. And then we started finding out, you know, a lot of the members of the FDNY, NYPD, you know, EMS and everybody, that they lost their lives, you know.
He's the kind of person that a lot of people didn't realize that they missed or that they would miss until he was gone. Because, you know, sometimes people make jokes and you kind of go, all right, Joe, you know, you got to stop now. But when they're gone, you really miss them because it was a part of your workplace. It was a part of your day. You know, it was just the way that your life went. There was always somebody there to make you smile and to do something like that. And I think a lot of people who maybe thought that they didn't like him as much as they did ended up realizing how much of a part of their life he was. And, you know, he was always out doing stuff with the Gone Club, which, you know, goes out to the fires to give out drinks and all that. And I know that he would always joke around with me, and that was something that was really missing when we came back here. And that was, you know, one of the things that really hit me that day when I just, you know, broke down, was the fact that even if life was going to carry on, it wasn't going to be the same. Because when you come back to work and you do your everyday stuff, you know, there's something missing. There's a part that, you know, isn't there to finish and complete the puzzle.
Yeah, everyone's struggling. I mean, you know, a lot of guys on the job knew more than me, less me, but, you know, guys were close. We have dispatchers who, they actually have family who are on the job. One of our dispatchers, his uncle was killed. He was a captain. So yeah, it's a family. You know, even with the dispatchers and the uniform force, it's hard. Guys know me by name on the radio. They know me by my number. I know them. You know.
I remember closer to Christmas time, when they had already started the reconstruction. I was on my way into work one evening, and there was a Christmas tree up on the right-hand side, right at the construction, right at the hole, and that was kind of hard. Because you start thinking about all those folks whose families have been affected by this. You know, whether they had a loss or not, it's going to affect them no matter what. Because if they didn't suffer a personal loss there, then a lot of them had friends or family or co-workers, and, you know, just the way that it affected people as a nation. You know, that's a lot of impact there.
I try to turn bad stresses into good stresses, and I know that probably sounds silly, but I have to go on. We all have to go on, and as sad as this is, that's what we have to do. We have to go on and look to the future and just keep on getting our job done, keep doing it the best we can.
When I was here, it was just my job, and I did it. I wasn't thinking. When I get home, that's when I realized what had happened that hit me. And I'm from New York, so I was trying to call my family and do things.
After I finished and wiped away my tears and all that stuff, I realized that, you know, things have to go on, you know. It was going to be very different, but we had to do what, you know, we had to do.
Yes, the other officer that was working that day is Lieutenant Gary Gates, who since retired in October, and he's doing very well. But when we all saw each other 2 days after the incident, there was nothing but crying for like 10 minutes. And we all thought each other was definitely dead.
The moment I remember is sitting in the EOC, and I don't remember who came in and told us, but they said the person that took the call from Flight 93 was my boyfriend. And that's when it all, that's when it came down to me.
Part of the 911 Cares project has been to offer free and confidential critical incident stress debriefings to the many affected centers. PSTC stress experts included Janet Childs, Tracy Deichman, Kevin Willett, Dave Larton, and Richard Baer. This team of individuals has spent countless hours in person, on the phone, and via email, providing emotional support to many of the voices of September 11th. Though confidentiality precludes us from sharing stories learned in a debriefing, we asked our Voices participants, what has the coping path been like, and what can dispatchers around the nation learn about coping with stress?
When I was asked to be part of the team to travel to New York, I jumped at the offer. I had no idea what to expect, neither when I arrived, nor how many dispatchers to expect at the appreciation reception. I was in awe when over 500 dispatchers arrived. Every dispatcher I spoke with expressed their gratitude and thanks, not only for recognizing their work and dedication on September 11th, but also for the work we as dispatchers do every day. Several of the critical incident team members spoke with the dispatchers the evening of the reception and heard their stories of where they were when the planes hit. We offered stress counseling to those who wanted it. It was truly powerful. I listened to dispatchers expressing their concern for the officers, firefighters, EMS personnel, friends, and family. It's interesting how dispatchers are always concerned for the voices on the other end of the radio. The extenuating circumstances put every sensory in full gear. I wanted to personally recognize and praise every dispatcher. And as a dispatcher from the West Coast, I was truly honored and proud to have been able to assist in the healing process of our fellow dispatchers on the East Coast.
Because of the latitude that's given to me, you know, and I don't know if you've interviewed the Manhattan supervisor, but the latitude given to him too, who went to the Trade Center. And so you therefore had a bit of a control over who lived and who didn't live. And that bothered me for a while, and I'm sure that bothered a lot of people. There was incident debriefings and stress debriefings, and they were well attended, and people poured their heart out at them, justifiably so.
Anytime I hear an aviation crash, I get butterflies in my stomach. I kind of get that feeling because of the history of my sister being killed on the TWA 800. I've been real active in aviation reform and aviation safety, and I'm also part of a critical incident stress debriefing team locally. So it's taken me down some avenues that I know I could make an effect in some way, you know, try to help someone else to take care of themselves in a way and get themselves back together and realize they're not losing their mind from a critical incident stress situation. There's been offers of teams came through here, you know, offering services to people in the dispatch centers and members of the fire department. We have our employee assistance people. They made themselves available, and there's been resources that people show up, not even knowing who they were. They're all, you know, these critical incident stress teams and, you know, self-proclaimed counselors, and it was nice that they're thinking of it, but it's not the same as they have that peer support type person for critical incident stress. You know, guys don't know who you are. And, I found myself here because of my background, going one-on-one with a lot of guys working, especially guys on my shift. We started, you know, reminisce about events. The fire service is pretty unique in that way, where they go back and they talk about the job they were on or what happened. And it's kind of a therapeutic way, almost like if you're in the critical incident stress field, it'd be almost like a diffusing. Guys that, you know, naturally in the fire service reminisce about the job. And I think that's been very helpful here. And there's been a few people that have gone on to, you know, more counseling or other sessions, and some people were very helped by it. Or just the nature that we kept things very professional, people were able to separate themselves a little bit and be able to cope with things in their own way.
We had, like, you know, de-stressing classes, supports groups, whatever you may have wanted to participate, but you were not forced to do so. You know, I found more security within my church and within my own being, and I think that's just how strong your faith is.
We had a critical incident stress debriefing, however long it took to get to us, because it went all the way through the police department, fire department first, and then they thought about us. But when they did, we had masseuses up here. We would get, you know, 20-minute massages. Everyone would take turns and do that, and that lasted about 3 weeks. We were given breaks and, you know, allowed to, if you needed time off, to do it. And now things are trying to get back into the routine, and those things are slowly being phased out, but it's different things you have to do to cope with it, and you know, we've been made available, the employee assistance professionals here, and so far so good.
these dog handlers would come up to you and say, you want to sit down with the dog and pet the dog for a while and see what it feels like, just to relax, just to get the pressure off you. And that really helped. There were doctors there, there were chiropractors there that were helping us out to make it feel better. And there were some chaplains from Virginia that were there that were helping us out, that were sitting down with us and talking with us just to get it off your mind and what have you. And that really helped.
When we went there in October, we stopped in. At that point, they were still serving meals for the rescue workers. We stopped in, got something to eat, and the place was, to put it into a word, I just have to say that entire facility was transformed into the embodiment of love. There were pictures, drawings, items, words of condolence everywhere, plastered on the walls, hanging from the fence, on the light poles, on the barricades. They were everywhere. T-shirts, hats, anything, just to show people that they're being thought of.
I personally, no, I have no desire to go down and see it. At first I thought I might, but I didn't think I could handle it. I just didn't want to see it. I don't know, I guess maybe out of mind, out of sight, out of mind.
I went down there the second week, the week after it happened, I went down there. And the air was kind of thick and it was hard to breathe, but I wanted to see it. I have to see it, I had to see it. So when they had when the piece of the building was still sticking in the ground, I saw that.
When I know that it's the right time for me to go. I don't fear it really, but I haven't gone there yet.
Pray for the families and people that are affected. But support and faith, that's pretty much what I've done. And talking about it, it helps to talk about your feelings, especially, some of the people, some of the masculine friends that work here. They're not big talkers, so maybe if I'm talking about it, it helps them deal with it, even if they're not talking back about it. At least they're coping with it instead of shutting it down, and that's all you really can do. Everyone has their own way of coping with it. That's my way.
And one of the things that I encouraged people to do, and still do today, is to talk about it. That is probably the greatest healing mechanism we have, to openly express our feelings, to share what we were really thinking, and not be ashamed to do that, because we are all human beings and we're all affected in many different ways. But we did that as a family, and it was good therapy for all of us.
So I guess I've dealt with it in my own way, just watching some of the specials that are out there, and just, I guess, and going to the funeral for Captain Hatton was the good thing for me. Just going that, and I'm trying to get back in the routine. I'm hanging out at rescue again, going to visit them again. So it's just get back to normalcy and making do.
Counseling I haven't sought out. Time definitely is necessary to heal wounds. Everybody has a different healing process. Some people can heal in a few days, some a few weeks, some months. I think the best thing you can do is talk about it. If you try and make like it never happened, you try and ignore it, you don't want to talk about it, you avoid conversations, you keep it inside you. So I think talking about it, whether you choose to talk to your partner, a loved one, or a professional, that's an individual choice, but you need to talk about it.
It's just certain things, like thinking about it, and then thinking about the couple of guys, a lot of guys I knew, maybe out of the 37, I knew maybe like around 29, because of 16 years on a job, and a lot of these guys I knew pretty well. Like Sergeant Kalfers, that morning I was talking to him on the phone at 6:30, because he was like, these guys are real kiddies when they come in.
Don't take life for granted, And I got 3 kids, and you got to look at that too, like the guys on Flight 93, and I'm sure the other ones had kids and that. One minute you're here, next minute you're not, so you can't take life for granted. Live it to its fullest.
Everybody asks me, of course, how do you deal with it? I don't have an answer for that. I come to work. Believe it or not, chaotic as a 911 center can be, and we're usually very busy. Most people, you know, a lot of people come here because this is a job. Don't get me wrong, when I'm home, I'm very comfortable. I love my home, I love the surroundings there. When I come to work, when I walk in this door, other people, you know, they want to turn around and walk right back out. When I come here, I'm like in my little bubble, you know, so.
Trying to go on, you know, it's like life goes on, and it hurts, but I feel better now. I feel I'm getting back to my normalcy.
Everybody has a way of grieving, and I haven't gone to any of the funerals. I know a lot of my coworkers are having a very, very tough time. The coworkers I had in the mayor's office, because we were from different agencies, they're taking it very, very bad, and they're not grieving yet. So the people that are down there, the people that went down there, I give all the credit in the world to it. We have our people, our communications personnel, on a time off would get down there. If they weren't getting paid time and a half, they didn't care, they would volunteer, but they were down there all the time, and it was a tough, tough job. They would come back and you could smell the uniforms and know where they were. They didn't have to tell you where they were. You know where they were. And they would come back and go right to work on our job. And these are great people.
The desire, I wasn't too sure that I wanted to do that in the beginning. I knew I did, but I wasn't sure. I don't know how to explain it. And you want to, but you don't want to type thing. Well, I have since decided that yes, that I would. I don't know what I'm going to say to the lady. I don't even know if I'd be able to talk to her, quite honestly, but I understand from the FBI, and you know, people here could tell you that she was, for 6, 7 months after the fact, the lady didn't even know that her husband called me. Well, I you know, came to a point where I decided she needed to know, if for no other reason. I think if it was me in her shoes, of course, everything's going to be different, but it would have to provide some sort of comfort level, just knowing, you know, that he was able to talk to somebody, which he did. So they told her. But as of yet, no, I have not talked to him.
In the interim, I was going to sometimes 2 or 3 funerals a day to guys I knew and didn't know. I just, you know, I felt I had to do that. Then it got to a point I had to start to come back to reality. Started, you know, exercising again. I went for some counseling, and that helped me in getting more back into things with my family and kids. I was taking my kids to the movies and trying to go on with my life.
I started going to the gym on a regular basis just to get away from it, work out, put on my headset, so that I would have that 1 hour to myself to just kind of de-stress.
I attend as many funerals as I possibly can. The guys that I grew up with, that I knew. I do the best I can to cope with it. I mean, mentally, you have to deal with it, and you have to go on, you know. And it's just that I just hope this never happens again. And to the low lifes out there that did it, don't come back here again. You know, we got your name.
I don't think I've coped with it. Like, I still believe that, you know, everyone's going to move on and not forget about it, but be able to get on with their lives in a way that's manageable for them. But even though I didn't lose a loved one, all those people that did, and I was involved, I couldn't do more to help them. That's difficult to deal with, and I still haven't fully dealt with that.
You could control people's lives at just the push of a button, you know, and that's really scary, you know. Manhattan would call me up, and they would say, I need 5 engines and 5 trucks, all right? It's up to me to pick out who those 5 engines and 5 trucks are, you know. So you pick out company A, B, C, D, and E, you know, and you go here, and then he'll call you back 5 minutes later. I need 5 more engines, and they got to go to the trade center or something, you know. Okay, so you pick, and at this point in time, we'll say the trade center hasn't collapsed yet. So you pick out company F, G, H, I, J, K, you know, and you send them, and all of a sudden you find out that nobody from those companies came back, you know. So that's tough. That's tough.
Well, we have a lot of opportunity for overtime on your days off. I used to work a lot of that. I don't anymore.
my days off. I will work if somebody needs someone to work for them, but just to come in here and say, oh, I have nothing to do that day, so I'll just come and work for, no. I use that time to kind of de-stress. The full 4 days that I have off are usually de-stressing time for me, so by the time I come back to work on my first day, I'm ready.
There was a fellow in Rescue 3 who was getting in his car and going home. The parking lot was across the street from the firehouse, and if under normal circumstances, the computer would have spit out the ticket, would have been pretty much a silent alarm. They would have heard it in the house, but to hear it across the street, I don't think they would have heard it. But he heard me get on the voice arm and say, Rescue 3, take the collapse rig and go to the trade center, don't wait for the ticket. When he heard that, he evidently figured, gee, it's got to be some catastrophe, something of catastrophic proportion. And he jumped back, he ran back into the firehouse, grabbed his gear, jumped on the rig, and went to the trade center. And he unfortunately never came back, as the others in his unit that day did also. They never came back.
The best way that I'm dealing with it is just to keep doing what I'm doing and knowing that I do make a difference. We do make a difference as a team. If someone's in trouble or there's something wrong somewhere, that they have nowhere else to call, even if it's not really a 911 emergency, when they call here, you know, even if it's trivial to us, it may have helped their day and, you know, caused them to go on a better path for the day or took the stress out of their life for the day. And just the fact that to keep on doing that and to know that it's worthwhile to do that is how I've been coping with the whole thing.
You know, this is what I do. So, granted, you know, coming back in and taking the first 911 call, you know, I'm sure I didn't want to press that button, but I'm a firm believer, you know, you got to get right back into it, which I did.
It was very rough. I would go home. Actually, my grades dropped. But like I said, little by little, between my family at home and the family I have over at the communications, it's been much better. I still get choked up, especially there was a magazine article out with some articles, and I did get choked up. Especially they had a special video on TV regarding 911, and that really took a little toll on me. But like I said, I coped with it. The family helped, both families, and the fire department really were there for us.
We lost 2 paramedics that day from the city. One of them was on the phone with one of my dispatchers up until the towers came down. Yeah, we've been to the funerals, we've been to the wakes. I've been to, I was at my first funeral that week after Mark Schwartz from the Hunter Private Ambulance Company, who was underneath the towers when they collapsed. He was killed, and I was at there just like a week or 2 after September 11th, and that was my first of many. And unfortunately, couldn't make all of them because, you know, I still had to work, and sometimes there were 10 or 12 a day.
But I did go to memorials. I went to the Terry Hatton funeral specifically because Terry, as the captain of rescue, you know, he had stopped in at the CO a couple times. You know, he was pretty much on a first-name basis with all of us, especially the tour that I work on, the groups that I work with. So I went and I felt really bad for his wife. Every funeral I've gone to, it's hard for me, even though I'm a dispatcher and it affects me in that way, but I'm also a wife of a fireman. So
And actually, I've been very close with Rescue 1, so I've kind of shied away from the firehouse. I went to the captain's funeral, went to his wake, and in fact, his wife just gave birth back in May. In fact, he didn't know she was pregnant, so it's one of those good thing, bad things, but we kind of got together in the office and bought baby presents for her and everything else. So I guess I've just kind of dealt with it, just watching the different things and trying to learn from the experience. So maybe if it happens again, maybe we can do something different, maybe we can't.
I've been playing the bagpipes for like 21 years, so I've played numerous funerals, but nothing of this magnitude. When you're playing for guys, we lost 3 drummers from our pipe band, and one of them was my classmate, and I lost 4 classmates altogether. So you go in these funerals, and then you go through and see, and you go into every funeral, and you see what, it's just like it's an emotional roller coaster. You're up, you're down, and then certain thing will set you off and you start crying.
Going to memorials, I don't really think it helped cope because I couldn't always get to all of them because there were so many. And it wasn't just guys that I worked with every day. There were friends that we lost. That one of my wife's best friends lost her husband in all of this. And matter of fact, that was one of the first ones I went to. And that was a difficult one to go to. And all the memorials were hard because we're having memorials and we couldn't find them. And we're only just recently finding a couple again. So not only did we go through memorials, we had to go through a funeral again. And some of the guys we found in the beginning, and we were able to say goodbye to them, and that was it. It was over, but some of them we still haven't found, and some of them were just recently found.
So the support from throughout the department's been tremendous. The support throughout the state's been tremendous. Everybody's been really super about it, as you would expect in something of this magnitude.
Shortly after September 11th, PSTC and 911 Cares got the word out that your fellow 911 professionals could really use a boost and some emotional support. Gifts, cards, and posters started arriving immediately, and the staff at PSTC donated their time making sure every card, letter, gift, and child's drawing was distributed to one of the many 911 centers that was affected by the tragedies. The agencies that received the many 911 Cares packages wanted to express their heartfelt thanks for your kindness and share how the outpouring of generosity and creativity helped them cope with the difficult times.
We had a whole wall out in the hallway of just cards. I mean, from California, from, being on the East Coast, you often don't think past the next couple of states over. But people from the Midwest, from everywhere. And it was just amazing to see how many people took the time out to send us their best wishes and to tell us that, we had done a good job. And, and it really gave you confidence that you had done all that you could, because sometimes you kind of look back and you wonder, should you have done something differently, or, did you really do what you had to do? And then, you get these cards saying how, you're the lifeline, and, things couldn't have gone the way that they should have if you hadn't been there. And you see all these signatures from people. You have plaques and, posters, and it really made you feel like people were looking out for you and that you weren't just sitting in a room behind a radio, forgotten about. The firefighters, the policemen, the EMS workers, all the volunteers, everyone else is out there. They're in front of the camera. You see them on the news and the papers. And the dispatchers kind of like hidden behind their headsets. So it was nice to see that people were thinking of us and offering their support.
I would come in the lobby every day wiping tears, every day, only because of what I saw. And I think I must have read every letter. I would spend my whole break and lunch hour just flipping through, reading the letters. I think I must have taken pictures of everything in the lobby and all of the things. We're still getting things. And every time I go through, when it first happened, when I walked through the lobby, it was just, that made me feel good, because I would come to work feeling like this, and once I entered the lobby, I would just expand, I would just grow, because of the appreciation, and then all of the plaques, and all of the other gifts and things that we got from all of the other centers all over, the whole 50 states, it just felt so good.
We received a lot of cards and letters from school kids all over, all over the country. And I made it a point that every day that I walked in, I said, I'm going to read every card, and I did. Every card that we got, drawings from little kids, it was really nice, and it helped brighten up your day when you started your shift. You come in a little bit early and look at some of this stuff and think, hey, there's people that actually, there's people out there that are really supporting you, and it was nice, very nice.
It's really amazing that as small as we are, you know, that we were able to be involved in something and that people all over the world recognize that. You know, even if our part, you know, I feel like we didn't do very much. You know, like there should have been more we could do right then, or how could we have been more involved? You know, I feel like our part was so minuscule as compared to New York and the Pentagon. But to just be recognized for the small part that we did have, it's amazing. It really is.
Different parts of the country saying God bless you, and little drawings of the World Trade Center, or some beautiful stuff, a halo over it. It's so beautiful. And to say, God almighty, people all over the country, all over the world, you know, it's somebody knows that somebody was doing their job.
One of our dispatchers, his daughter is a teacher in Colorado. The children send cards and dispatchers, we love you, and flags in America. My own sister-in-law's kindergarten class sent a huge card they all signed, and we needed that.
Seeing cards and boxes of candy, and, you know, we had companies nearby that would, you know, they had food and they had too much food, so they would give it to us. And, you know, for like 2 weeks after that, I didn't buy lunch. I went to work and never bought lunch for 2 weeks, and it was very strange for us, or at least for me. It was amazing. It was like, we know how it is. We know what it's like, and we can't even imagine it.
Kids writing cards and drawing pictures, and you know, just most of the time, most of the cards just said thank you. And it was important, that, I think, more in the beginning than anything else, because at least we knew we weren't alone. And it helped a lot, I think, in the beginning to have stuff like that. And the outpouring around the country was unbelievable.
Some places sent care packages, food, and posters with signatures on, mostly from dispatch centers and police agencies.
We got a care package from I think it was South Carolina. I call it a care package. It had like photographs and a photo album of the dispatchers down there, and little stuffed animals, and, you know, just things like that they were sending up here.
Not just from school kids did we get letters. We got letters from dispatch centers, from sheriff's departments, from everybody from any walk of life, you know. And I've just found it to be very, very supportive, you know. And a lot of them, especially from dispatchers, said that, you know, we know your pain, we know your burden, and we know that you're just going to be shoved off into a corner, you know.
When I started seeing the care gifts and the care packages and the gifts, and I thought, hey, you know, this is pretty cool. This was nice, knowing that people out there like yourself, other dispatchers. I mean, I thought that was wonderful.
I read up until I started getting tears. And then I back off and I said, okay, can't deal with that anymore. Let me do something else for a little while.
Amazing amount of cards that we got. We got them from other dispatch centers. We got them from children in other states, from their schools. And sometimes we would get these just boxes full of just knickknacks, like different snacks or little toys or anything. Just, I can't really remember exactly what, but, you know, we just pour them all over the table, and people are like, wow, look at that. So, but it was really nice, because it showed that, you know, other people were trying to think of us and would have helped us if they could.
It was great, because at least we were acknowledged. The support was immense. It was incredible, the support we got from everybody. And the different, you know, I mean, kids, children, you know, who would ever think, you know? And you'd be surprised, kids are aware of things, you know, and they notice a lot. We have a quilt from a class that was different pictures, different sayings, beautiful. We also have cards thanking us from classes, you know, out of state, and it was immense. It was great. It was really great.
We had a tremendous amount of outpouring from people up the street bringing us food to the firehouse, bringing cookies, to cards, to the 911 cares, the cards, the boxes, the Federal Express boxes full of cards and banners and plaques, and And it was real moving and guys here didn't realize what kind of effect and what kind of role we really played in the big picture. And they really didn't realize how important, you know, Jersey City was to the World Trade Center attacks and what type of role it played. Hanging the cards up in the hallway, and the guys would just start, you know, they would stop walking down the hall and start reading some cards and looking at some plaques or some posters or some cards. At one point we got some mail from Oklahoma City fire. We got stuffed animals. My wife's a teacher in Jersey City, and she got the stuffed animals from Oklahoma City school groups, posters and banners, and the support's been tremendous, and it still is today. People look at the fire service and public safety and EMS and even the police department very differently now, especially around this area of the country after 9/11.
People started commending us and telling us what a good job we had done, or just trying to, you know, sympathize with our needs, and we really appreciated that. I mean, surprised, yes, and we were quite overwhelmed. The stuff started coming in left and right, and of course, we got a lot of stuff from the West Coast that you had sent us, all different kinds of postcards and stuff that we distributed. And I think that was really a very important part of our healing process. And I don't think, if we hadn't gotten that, I think that we really wouldn't have rebounded. We wouldn't have gotten back on our feet as fast as we did.
Our officials let us know. They actually came over and talked with us and told us how much they really cared about what we did. So it was just the support from our officials that really helped us a lot, and our families.
The most recognized thing that happened was when we did receive the award from NENA, the National Emergency Number Association. It caught us completely off guard. We were at our Pennsylvania convention in State College, and for some reason our director was told to go there, and he knew something was going on, but he wouldn't let on to anybody. And they awarded to Allegheny County, Westmoreland County, Somerset County, Arlington, Virginia, and New York City.
Steve Gregory, our assistant commissioner, and John Porcelli, the director of communications, went out of their way to communicate with each individual officers and a lot of the people personally, and just tell them really how much they appreciated the effort and the work that they did. And I think that was quite significant and meaningful, and they appreciated doing that. And also they understood and respected the effort that the people did. We had a tremendous amount of volunteers that came in that day.
Do we still get as much respect as we should from the firemen? I'm afraid I have to say sometimes I don't think we do. But I think they realize more since 9/11 just what our job is and how hard it can be. And the fact that we were there and we hung in and we're still there, and I think that has earned us some respect from them.
It was about 1700 when I received in my office an email from a person that I had never met and never knew, from a comm center that I never heard of, but that basically said, our thoughts and our prayers are with you. We can well imagine what you are going through, and we're proud to have you as one of our colleagues.
A lot of times nobody thinks about a dispatcher or somebody on a radio or anything like that, because if you've got a scanner, if you're out on the field, it's a little voice that's coming out of your speaker, and a lot of times you can't even match the face up to the voice because you don't know who it is. But coming to work as a dispatcher was really great because you learn the infrastructure of what holds the fire department or the ambulance corps or the police department together, and you see all the little pieces that have to come together for the job to get done. Whether it's making a simple phone call or comforting somebody on the other line of the phone, it really makes you realize that there's more going on than what you see outside. There's more than just the people responding to the calls, there's the people putting the calls out and getting the information and making sure that they get there to do their job.
And I tell people, you want to be a dispatcher, I love it, it's a great profession. It's a stepping stone, yes, for police officers, but it's also a career. And that's what I plan to stay here and make it a career and retire from it.
All the companies around our office who were like normally first to at the office, we invited them up for cake, cookies, and like coffee and stuff, just to say thanks, because they didn't forget us. So they were all up for a while and visited and everything else, and it was kind of nice. And a lot of them hadn't been up there before, and it got them a chance. And even one guy was working on the 11th, riding down there, and even when he was in the office, he goes, "I can only imagine what it was like in here."
We're there to answer the phone, and people expect us when they dial 911 to answer the phone and be there. But I think a lot of people think when they're calling the actual fire department or the actual ambulance service. And you know, dispatchers don't always get the credit they deserve. And it was nice to know that these other dispatch centers around the country understood and were able to relate to it and give us some support for what we were doing.
Bucks County, Pennsylvania, just outside of Philadelphia. They helped us tremendously. They sent people down and traveled just to see us. And that made us feel more like 911 as a family. What we do out there affects, other people knew what we were going through.
We're telling people to go give blood. If you can't do anything else, go do that. And she said, you see so much about, the police officers and the firefighters and the medics, and not to degrade what they do at all, but how would they do what they do if they didn't have you all? She said, yes, they're truly heroes, but you all need to be bumped in with that bunch too.
The support you get outside there, remember, I get my support from the Jewish community too, so what other people don't get. So I'm one in a million that wherever I go, so how was it, Moshe, how was it? You did a good job, you did a great job. And we get the support, but the stress is still there.
Really nice to get the support, because as dispatchers, we're often just criticized and not recognized or thought about. So that was nice to know that other people cared a lot about our center.
Knowing that it's a thankless job, but you go home feeling good, when you've helped someone revive a child that's not breathing any longer. So going home with a good feeling, knowing you've done your best, it makes it worthwhile.
The local companies around us, actually, they were getting inundated with food. They had so much food that they actually made sure we had extra food. They'd stopped by with us for food. One of the companies actually called us up one day, "How are you guys doing?" I mean, we asked them how he was, they go, "Fine, how are you guys making do?" So, I mean, we were forgotten, but then all of a sudden we weren't. They remember we were there, and it was kind of nice knowing that we were there and that we were not forgotten for a change.
We have great people here. They can do the job, and as you've heard from other people, they work as a team when they have to work as a team, and they work as family when they're working as family.
We're the guys that are behind the scene, so we don't really get too much appreciation or people saying thank you, and we were very happy that there are people out there that really care about us, that know we're out there, and they know that what we do is very important.
The people in the room had a hard job that day. We're very fortunate to have the staff that we do. From a management standpoint, I'm proud to be a resident of Westmoreland County, and I'm proud to have the staff that we have, because they can do the job. They know what to do when the proverbial thing hits the fan, and they did it. They're great. I would not give any of them up for anything. No first-round draft choice or anything like that. These are million-dollar people, and I just wish we could pay them million-dollar salaries.
We're very, very pleased at the responsiveness of the entire emergency communication professionals that have reached out to us since September 11th.
To know that other centers around, they actually thought of us. They had empathy and a little sympathy for us, and they really supported us, so it really made us feel great.
The support from the public and even from folks like yourself and other departments around the country has been phenomenal. Even around the world, I remember seeing letters from Germany, from England, California, Montana, Texas, everywhere. And for those of you in other departments, on behalf of just myself, thank you. It means a lot. It really does.
On September 11th, the 911 dispatchers worked together as a team. They needed to take action on every phone call they received without hesitation. Quick and disciplined decisions needed to be made for the people calling for help or for the units in the field who were trapped and pleading to be rescued. Each of the jurisdictions involved also needed to continue to answer and send units to the emergencies that continued to happen, even as the events of September 11th unfolded. The 911 centers were immediately overwhelmed that day, but they did their job and became the voices of September 11th.
You only hear about dispatchers when something bad happens. You know, you hear the tapes on TV, and you never really get to see what goes on. And even people on the other side of the radio, the firefighters and the fire officers, don't really have an idea of what goes on. And after September 11th, a lot of them have taken a very big interest, or at least the ones that I've come across over the course of the past few months have taken a very big interest. Why is this done? Why is that done? What was it like in there that day? And you know, you do the best you can to explain it to them.
When I got there, everyone was just pitching in, doing what they had to do. We had the deputy director on the radio. We had borough chief on the voice alarm. Titles went out the window. Everybody just rolled up their sleeves, did what they had to do. Good, bad, or ugly, job got done.
The citywide, that's where, you know, I said our specialty units are. There was a supervisor there working, Supervisor George Rivera. And it seemed like we were in Manhattan, which was on one side of the floor, and he was there, and he organized everything. He kept us, he put the whole thing together as far as we were concerned, what we had to do, who we had to notify, we had to clear out Gracie Mansion. He made sure all of that was done. And he had to be the most informed person that day in terrorist activity when it came to that, because the officers in the field called him, and when they called him, he delegated to someone to call this division. Everything they needed, we sent. And it was, the sad part about it was we were sending in officers knowing that they may not come back out.
Everybody coming together, everybody helping out. You know, nobody had to say, we need this, we need the other. Everybody was there. You know, everybody pulled together, and we were there for each other.
We all work well together. You know, we're a small force. We handle 5 boroughs, and we always do well under pressure. And this was some, I would have to say, a test for us. And I think we came out shining like we always do and always will.
The other boroughs, I mean, you know, the incident was in Manhattan, but the other 4 boroughs were definitely responsible, equally responsible for the overall operation, because without their assistance, they got the overflow calls. They were answering as many calls as we were answering in Manhattan, but also the sharing of the equipment and getting the equipment there that fast was helpful in completing our task, and that was extremely important.
I personally didn't have a strong part in this compared to so many other people, but the teamwork, I think, was outstanding. It was really wonderful.
That moment is just that how everybody worked together. It's very, very difficult. I mean, I've been working, and I've been out on the street working on ambulances. It's sometimes when people are hesitant, you know, because I'm Jew, you're not this, you're not, sometimes biased. But at that time, everything was like one family. We're all crying together.
You were typing and talking, and then you all of a sudden start to cry. She would say, let me sit for you. And usually there's none of that. No way, I'm on break, I'm out. But they were like, no, let me sit for you, you go get yourself together and then you come back. Or do you need something to drink? Let me get you something to eat. Do you have anybody you want me to call? It was a lot of that, it was a lot of teamwork and united, you know, fellowship that day. at our center. And I was real proud of my coworkers for that, because usually it's none of that.
We all pull together because, you know, I'm on the other side a lot. I see them out there, and the companies pull together. You know, the officer counts on the men count on the officer. And I like that because I saw that in the office. All of us working, the ones who were off, who came in, we all worked as a well-oiled machine, and everyone did a part, and it wouldn't have got done without anyone. And it was the same in every borough, I know it. Every borough, you know, the other 4 boroughs, we all supported Manhattan.
We did a good job. Everybody that showed up that day, anybody that needed anything, you know, we were there for each other. And even like if you got 5 minutes to step outside, while we were standing outside, you know, we were talking about it, you know, emotionally, physically, you know, we were there for each other.
We all get together, the job gets done. We may joke around, fool around, but when time comes, we do the job.
Even though how hectic it was, we just kind of stayed on that steady course. There was no screaming on our end. And maybe everybody got on everybody's nerves, but I think it was just the nature of the beast that day. It was just how, I guess everybody was calm, just kind of kept our wits and did what we had to do to maintain the rest of the city.
It took everybody, all the dispatchers we had on duty and off duty coming in to make things work, and I think we did an excellent job for considering the size of our county, that we're rural, and our resources are limited at times. I think that all the dispatchers we have did an excellent job of pitching in and getting equipment, getting everything the FBI needed. We had a lot of requests for resources, and we all, I think we did a pretty good job of taking care of it.
We had people calling, can I come help? Can I come to work? People coming in early for their shifts, staying over late from their shifts to just stay and help and do whatever they can. We were doing little things like calling local schools to find out if they were letting children out early, or if it was okay if their parents came together. Little things like that the public were calling that maybe we wouldn't have had an answer for if someone hadn't done that. It was just a total sense of a working unit. Everybody just came together.
Just watching the camaraderie of everybody and watching everybody work together and, pat each other on the back and just, actually give each other hugs and just try to work through some of it together was really amazing.
You don't have to watch over somebody to know what they're doing. You don't have to, everybody, the training kicked in. They did their job.
The dispatchers that were actually on duty that day, when the calls started coming in, we were getting dozens of calls, and those guys were swamped. They were trying to maintain some kind of order in the center. With the relationship we have with the police departments and things like that, Somerset Police Department in town here had officers up here almost immediately helping out to answer phones. We had county detectives that showed up in the center. They were answering phones. Secretaries from some of the different offices were in there answering phones. So, between our own people that were coming in and the relationship we have with the other agencies, we had police officers, off-duty dispatchers and everything just showing up and doing whatever they could to help out in the center to deal with the Flight 93 incident and also the day-to-day calls.
I just think everyone did a great job. Our management people were there for us, you need a break, they brought food in. The support was tremendous. And like you said, it is a very dysfunctional family. I think all emergency services, EMS, police, you sometimes hate those people, but you know what? When the chips are down, they're right there for you. And everyone just pulled together and was very supportive of each other, and the job got done. I'm very proud to work here.
Cooperation with everybody you're working with, because if you can't work as a team, then it's just not going to work, and you have to try to, talk to everybody and just do what you were trained to do.
How we all took advantage of that training, and everybody
came together, that it was a very well-oiled machine.
Because we work together in a team structure, and we're like family. We work 12-hour shifts, basically with the same people, and in some situations they work with the same people 20 years. I don't think you spend more time with your coworkers than you do with your family. You take each other's abilities and skills for granted. And it's only in these times of real crisis where everybody just does what they normally do as in a team effort, and you're able to accomplish. I mean, what we accomplished that day was really phenomenal. People cannot believe. Anybody that listens to the tapes, anybody that listens to the horrendous phone calls and stuff cannot believe that we actually were able to cope and was capable of doing that.
We had people that came in, saw it on the news, just drove into work to fill in spots, help out, relieve people that have been there for a while, you know, handle extra calls. We were out here dedicating to build our new center that day. So we had crews out here that went out and handled the command post at the airports, did support. Our management, you know, came in, asked us if we needed anything, you know, because we were going to be in the room for a long time handling it. You know, it was worked as a team. Worked as a team, you know. Not one individual did anything better than the other individual. It's just that get in there, you do the job, take care of it.
The dispatchers here, and even the services that we work with, fire, EMS, and police, we're more like a big family, and especially the dispatchers. I'm sure you know how it is when you work with people day in and day out in a dispatch center. You get to know people more than just a co-worker. You know a lot about them. You know birthdays, you know anniversaries, you know their kids' names and things like that. And so when something like this happens, people just jump in.
It still gives me chills now, you know. That was one of the days, you know, when we have a big storm or whatever, it's the same thing, but like I said, on a greater scale. And that was just watching everybody work together and work well together and the flow of it all, but watching everybody just be really nice to each other, you know.
It was my job. I did my job, but people went above and beyond, and then I'm proud to know them. I really am. They're great people.
We have to be strong. We have to be strong people. You know, I mean, it takes special people to do what we do because not everybody can handle it, you know.
God bless all those dispatchers that are never going to be heard from, but they're out there doing something for somebody, and there's somebody on the other end of a phone right now, and somebody's saving their life that nobody's going to know about, except the person on the other end of the phone and our dispatcher, or that dispatcher, wherever they are. But they're dealing with somebody right now as we speak and saving a life. We don't know where it is, but they're doing it, and God bless them.
We hope that the stories you've just heard will bring you a closer understanding of what 911 professionals all over America do. The fire, police, and EMS responders knew that day that there was an equally brave voice of September 11th, responding to their needs and watching over them.